Hey everybody, welcome back. This is another video coming at you from Xbox Repair DIY, and today this is going to be the second part of the How to Open Your Xbox One Controller series. Third part is going to be putting it all back together because sometimes, playing a video in reverse doesn't really do it for you. So, if you watched my earlier video, we've got the shell down to the circuit boards, the rumble packs, the triggers, the bumpers, and a few others. One of the first things that we're going to do in this video is detaching the rumble motors as you see them. And in order to do that, first we need to unscrew the two Torx screws that are holding together the back faceplate or back circuit board. So you're just going to use a Torx wrench, one of the smaller bits, or Torx screwdriver. I've got a Husky one here. It's like $5 at Home Depot or Lowe's. As you can see, there's a screw in the bottom right and there's also a screw in the bottom left that we're going to have to remove. Pretty simple and easy. Again, just take the Torx screwdriver, and remove those. Now, you don't want to try to remove these with a flathead or any type of other device because once these are stripped, I don't think it's very easy to get these back. And I don't think you can just go to your corner store and buy the screws. So if you strip them, you're in trouble. You might not be able to put the controller back together. Be careful of the rumble packs as those like to move around quite a bit. They're not really attached by anything other than the wires. They just kind of sit in those little sockets or holsters. And so just be careful. As you can see, I actually had one fall off. So that's what can happen if you're not paying attention. It'll actually strip one of the wires and it makes it a little bit more difficult at the second part here to resolder or solder these off. So the next step here, as you can see, is going to be unsoldering these connections where the rumble pack is attached to the circuit board. It's very simple. You're going to want to use a soldering iron, let it heat up. Quick FYI or disclaimer is soldering irons are dangerous. They get very hot. The chemicals that are used in soldering can be potentially dangerous, so pay attention there. As you can see, one of the first things we have to do before removing the rumble packs from the circuit board is taking off the tape that is holding down the wires that connect the circuit board and the rumble motors. These specifically are the ones that connect the trigger rumble motors to the circuit board in the back. So remove that tape, be careful with it, just put it somewhere on the frame, and then we'll go ahead and remove these wires in a few steps. So as you can see here, we want to take the soldering iron and just use the side of the tip to unsolder these connections. Again, if you don't know how to solder, please research it. If you're a minor, please have a parent help you, someone that's older, someone that knows what they're doing, as these things can be very dangerous. You just kind of want to slide the soldering off. Again, don't use the tip and be very careful not to touch any parts of the circuit board other than where you're soldering, as this could cause damage and destroy your controller. Sometimes they don't come off the first time. Just make sure you get in there, make sure you put the tip of the soldering iron or the side of the tip of the soldering iron on the solder enough to remove it. Again, get the wires out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and move on to these bottom two solders. And these are for the rumble packs that are in the stock of the controller, or the grips. A little bit bigger, same method. Once we have that removed, the rumble pack comes right out. As you can see, place that aside with your bigger parts that you have. Don't drop it like I did there. And then we're just going to go ahead and move on to the second part, or the second motor. We'll go ahead and remove these wires when we remove the metal piece around the D-pad and the bumpers and part of the triggers. So just a quick heads up, you can get a soldering iron online, Amazon, eBay, wherever, for fairly cheap. Solder is pretty cheap. I also recommend a magnifying glass if you have trouble with your eyesight or want to get a better look at the components, as it really helps when you actually go to dismantle the controller. You have a pretty good idea of what it looks like all the piece parts and the overall picture. Moving on to the next step here, we're going to be removing the back circuit board. Very easy here. It'll come right off. As you can see, it's on there right now because there's some male to female connectors, so on and so forth. But the first thing you're going to have to do is flip the controller over and remove the right stick and the left stick. They pop right off, no issues. Once that is done, you can flip over the controller, and as you can see here, there's some connectors inside that keep the two circuit boards together. Go ahead and put it down on the table, get some leverage, and you're just going to pop it out. Pretty simple. Awesome looking circuit board here. This houses the left and the right stick, as well as the B button there. The B button's on the back circuit board, and the other 3 buttons are on the top circuit board. So it might be the reason why your B button could be stuck or broken. Usually it's pretty isolated, and that is the reason why. It's because it's on a different mechanism or different circuit board there. Again, there's also the male and female connectors there that keep the 2 circuit boards together, and you can see there where the B button goes down through the first circuit board and touches the second there at that point we were showing earlier. Next part of taking the Xbox One controller apart is removing the metal piece around the D-pad. You're going to want to take something flat, something small. I'm using my Torx screwdriver. You can use some type of flat piece or a flathead screwdriver to remove this metal surrounding for the D-pad. And as you can see, basically it's kind of latched on there, and it's not necessarily going to pop off, but what it's going to do is it's on there right now, it's clamped on. You kind of have to bend the metal just a little bit, and this is very malleable, so it shouldn't be an issue to bend and bend it back again. So really just kind of bend that part off, and by doing that, you shouldn't have any issues getting that piece off. It might pop off like it did there. You know, not everything's pretty the first time you do it, as I'm doing it here. So you're going to want to remove that metal piece and then just pull the D-pad right off. As you can see, there's some white electronics grease in there. You do not want to have anything happen to that, because that is the grease that keeps the controller working properly. Just be careful. Make sure that you're not, messing with it too much, because we need it to have the controller to continue to work. So after you've removed the metal casing around the D-pad, the next portion of this video is going to be removing the bumpers. And the bumpers are not screwed on. They are kind of latched on like that metal piece around the D-pad was. They're just on there due to pressure, and they're kind of on these little pegs, as you can see there. They're kind of a pain in the butt to get off. This is probably the most difficult part of taking the controller apart, in my opinion, because what will happen is you'll take something like your Torx screwdriver, your flathead, whatever you use to pry the metal piece off, and once you get one side off there, that might come off easily, but once you flip it over, sometimes it just keeps reattaching the piece behind it. So you get one piece off, go to the other side, get the other piece off, but the other piece gets back on somehow. So what I really recommend is holding the trigger down, and it'll give you some leverage right behind that trigger to pop that second piece off, and it's going to be a little bit easier to do it that way. So again, parts might go flying. Be careful. Like I said, the first time you do this, it's not super glamorous. Once you've done it a few times and the pieces kind of loosen up, it's a little bit easier to get off. So once that's done, you can see just the triggers remaining, floppy triggers. Pretty cool triggers. They actually have their own rumble packs, which is neat, and I didn't know before taking apart this controller. As you can see there, that's the little peg that keeps the bumper on, and we're just going to be moving on to the second bumper here. Like I said, this is probably the most difficult part of taking apart the controller. It's not really that hard, but it could take you a few times, as you're seeing here. This is just, my first time run. Just wanted to show you guys exactly what it takes to take these apart and some of the struggles that you may see. So my video might be a little bit longer than some other people, but you're going to get the ins and outs here and know exactly what to expect. So it also provides me a few more minutes to comment on this. So once you get the second part off there, put it together with your other large pieces, and you've just removed the bumpers. So like I said, the two triggers remain here. Not much to it. Be careful with these. Just, make sure to keep your parts separated. Keep your screws in a small bucket or something so that way that you don't lose anything, because that would not be fun. After you've removed the bumpers, we're going to be moving on to removing the triggers. As you can see, we've got this down to pretty much bare bones. There's not a whole lot left to do. We got to take off the guide bracket, but that'll be coming after we remove the triggers. So these triggers are really two parts. They're screwed in with two Torx screws, which are going to be similar size to the ones that we've been taking out of the Xbox One controller, so it shouldn't be an issue there. You should have multiple bits with your Torx screwdriver if you need them, but this is going to be pretty simple. Again, as you can see, there's just two screws, and we're just going to be removing them, and what will happen is the bulk of the trigger will come off there, and whether you want to clean it or paint it, or something's wrong and need to replace your rumble motors or whatever you need to do, this will give you access to that. So two screws, again, keep those in a nice little pan there. I just have a little container that used to house some PC mouse weights for when I used to play a lot of PC games. I don't as much anymore, but it acts great as a container. If you have something that is magnetic, that would be even better. But again, just keep all your screws together. Don't have to worry about separating them, as they are pretty distinct in which ones go where when you go to put it back together. So no worries there. As you can see, after you kind of remove the triggers there, you can pull out the rumble motor and just place that aside. We'll be soldering that back on in part 3 of the video series. And we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other trigger. Pretty simple. Again, this is one of the easier parts, and it's actually pretty cool taking these things apart. The controller is really well built. It's well designed, and I know I enjoy using it. When I go back to put a Xbox 360 controller in my hand, I'm pretty blown away with how different they made it with the Xbox One, but it's a good thing. So, and as you can see, as we're taking this apart here, you're starting to learn, the components of the controller, the guts of it, how it works, and it gives you a much better idea. If something breaks or something's not working properly, you can probably troubleshoot a little bit better and have a great idea of what you need to fix. So we're removing this final piece here of the second trigger. Again, really easy. Just go ahead and pull those rumble motors out. Be careful with them again. You don't want to lose anything. You got to kind of pull it out of the brackets there, as it is kind of snakes in between the buttons there to keep everything organized. Just be cognizant of that as you go to put it back together. So once we have the triggers removed, our next goal really is to remove the second circuit board, but in order to do that, you're going to have to remove the housing around the guide button. As you can see, it's kind of latched on there again, just by virtue of being clamped on. Watch out for these little orange pieces of tape. Make sure they don't lose their stickiness. I think they're used for something. I'm not 100% sure, but the best tip to remove this guide button is going to be by pressing down, by moving the guide casing. You're going to want to press down on the guide button, which will give you some leverage there and allow you to just easily pop that off. That was a little bit loose because I had removed it once before just as a test run. Again, if you push the guide button down, it's going to be super simple, so don't worry about that, removing that, and we've got it down to this. So the next part here is going to be removing the second circuit board. Once we remove this second circuit board here with the 6 Torx screws, T6, same size as the ones you've been taking apart the whole time, or removing. As you can see, some in the bottom right hand corner, some across the top, some in the middle left, bottom left, all that kind of good stuff. This will give you access to the buttons, which is the really cool part, in my opinion, of the controller. Getting to actually take those buttons out and get to check out what they look like. I would highly recommend, as you're doing this, definitely clean the parts. Isopropyl rubbing alcohol, 91%, works really well. Obviously, don't put any electronics in liquids. I'm just talking about, if you have a bumper that needs cleaned, or a portion, of the outside casing, clean that. Just the plastic parts. Please do not use any liquid on any of the electronic parts. That will damage them. But again, this is a good time to paint, clean, do all that kind of stuff. And once you put the controller back together, it's going to be pretty much brand new, which is awesome. Everything should be working properly. Now, I know a lot of you have asked me about hey, my RB button is broken, my B button is broken. I have some other video parts that I'll be putting up talking to those specifics here in the next few weeks, like how to fix the RB button because mine was broken. And as you can see here, once we go ahead and remove those 6 Torx screws, you've got the second circuit board off and ready to go. It'll come right off, and right there are the right bumper and the left bumper buttons. That might be a problem area for you. Again, check out my other video. I got a link to it down below once it is ready to go. And then you're going to have the shell here with this rubber piece that overlays the buttons. It's going to be really easy, just comes right off here, and it's going to expose the menu and the select button or the start button, whatever the heck they're calling those. I think it might be the guide button or the menu button now. Clean that rubber piece off, it gets kind of dirty, and then really you're just going to go to work at popping the screws out of the frame. Pretty simple. Please set those aside somewhere safe. They're rather small. I would just put them in the container that you use to house the screws, the Torx screws that you were taking out of the controller. As you can see, just going to kind of pop them out there from the back. Really easy. And then the guide button, which is, I think, the coolest button. It's a neat little trinket there. Will come out, and there you have it. So really not that difficult. I tried to make this video easy to follow. That way you guys can take this apart without too much hassle. But at the end of the day, we're pretty much done. You can paint, repair, tinker around, do what you want to do, sell it for parts. I don't care. At the end of the day, you've got an Xbox One controller and all of its components taken apart. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm going to get the part 3 video out here pretty soon with reassembling it. Like and subscribe. Talk to you all later.